and welcome to our #WeConnect webinar series. I'm Dr. Woodland, Superintendent of Evergreen Park School District 124. We are here on a lovely Monday morning recording from Evergreen Park School District. And we are coming to you today with a very, very special guest. Her name is Miss Colleen Klimczak, and she happens to be our school board president. And not only is she our school board president, but she's just a lovely person to talk to. So I am so excited just to chat with her today. I've got my coffee cup on this lovely cold Monday morning, and we are just going to have a great time. And so I'm so excited to introduce her to everybody. Many of you know her from being a walking neighbor, somebody who they can just smile at and greet. She's just a great person to get to know. And so I'd like to introduce you. Welcome, Colleen. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. We often do connect, just not on screen or recorded. So I love that. And I'm happy to talk to you and to our community about our topics today. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So our first topic for today, I would really love to just hear a little bit about you and your work and what the work of a Board of Education really looks like and sounds like.
Got it. So yes, I am your Board of Ed president. This is my 8th year as a member and my 4th as the Board of Ed president. Every Board of Education, at least in the state of Illinois, consists of 7 members. The Board of Education they are part of the consolidated elections every 2 years. So every 2 years, there's either 3 open spots or 4. And so I've been on here since 2017. Just because I'm Board of Ed president doesn't mean I have any special powers. I don't get any more votes than anybody else. My vote doesn't have any more sway than anybody else. And I'm careful to make that the case as well in conversations and things like that. I like to let everybody else kind of speak before I might say something, because I don't want just because it's the Board of Ed president, I don't want that to impact anybody else's opinions, decisions, thought processes, etc. So there is leadership, though, right?
Yes.
So
not leadership as a board president.
If I say there's just 7 people randomly talking about things, that sounds like it could be bedlam, but there's not. So that is the Board of Education president role. And then there's also other leadership roles within the 7 members. So the leadership roles per our board policy are board president, board vice president, and our secretary. And so, like I said, I don't have any more powers than anyone else, but I do have some more responsibilities.
Yes, you do have a lot of responsibilities. I think it would be great to hear from you. What are those responsibilities?
I do, and you know them.
Yes.
So Dr. Woodland and I do have the opportunity to chat often because communication, I think, would you say that's my most important responsibility? I kind of feel like I would.
The board's responsibility in general too. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So one of my main responsibilities as the Board of Ed president is to communicate on behalf of the body of the Board of Ed, right? So the 7 of us, one of the things we all adhere to is we speak with one voice, and that is from our board training and all of our professional development that we have to do. We do speak with one voice. So we might not all agree with the decision, but we do step forward, right? With confidence, with whatever we have voted upon. And so it's up to me to communicate that with internal sources like our staff or our students or our superintendent, right? And even specifically to a staff member. So if someone came to us, maybe they had a comment in public comments at a board meeting, which is invited and recommended, and that's great. or if there's a question that comes in a meeting that we're in, right? So all of the board members have committee responsibilities. And so maybe there's something that came up in a board meeting, or together let's communicate meeting, or finance, or something like that. So all of that is important, but we might even just be speaking as in one voice to a specific question from a staff member. So that's all my responsibility, because that one voice is important. And can you imagine if we all 7 sent, that would be crazy. If we all 7 sent a response to someone, that would, could get confusing and things like that. So those are the internal sources. And then my responsibility also as Board of Ed president is to communicate with external sources. So that could be a parent, or parents, right? It could be all of our parents. So, if there's something that needs to come out from all of us to all of our community, then that's my responsibility as well. Our community, like I said, and then even occasionally, like the media, if there was somebody who wanted to talk to me on behalf of the board regarding a change in policy or something we acted on in a Board of Education meeting or something like that, then that would be my responsibility as well. So I think that's I think it's a very important one. It's also probably one of the more time consuming.
Yes.
Maybe that's why I'm thinking of it that way. It's definitely important and therefore time consuming, because one of the things I admire about Dr. Woodland as well is we're both very careful and well thought in our communications, because our community deserves that.
They absolutely deserve it.
They absolutely deserve that. So important. And so it is something that I spend a lot of time on, because that's, it's important that we get it right.
Yes.
And then, so that's the kind of public facing, right? That's one of the obvious responsibilities that everyone can see. One of the less forward facing, but no less important in parts of the responsibilities for the president is to make sure that the board is acting on policy.
Yes.
We've been talking a lot about policy lately.
So much about policy.
Yes, absolutely.
So why is board policy review so important as a board?
So we have spent a lot of time on policy, and specifically a specific project even. But let me tell you why we did the project, right? Yeah. So Dr. Woodland knows, but for anyone watching, we have undertaken a board policy review. And we started it in fall of 2023. And it was successfully updated on our website. And that part is very forward facing in August of 2024. And if we could somehow put some balloons and confetti on that, because it was such a big and important process and also achievement. I'm very proud of us for that. The Board of Education exists outside of the people on it, right? So the Board of Education is what governs the district. It is more than 7 people. It is the embodiment of all the things that we're supposed to be doing that we've honed.
Yes.
Reviewed. We don't necessarily craft every policy. So many of our policies come from the state, from law.
Yes.
Oh yeah. State law and legislation that's passed. So we review it. There's actually a policy committee that's one of the few board committees, specifically Board of Education committees. And there's a policy committee that meets every other month when those policies come out from the state. And so we review those. But this opportunity that we undertook was to look at every page. And it was a big one.
Yeah, it was a big project.
It was a big project.
Well overdue. Don't you think it was time?
I do. I really do. Please.
Yeah, no, I do. I just think it was time for us as, we transitioned our Board of Education. We had 7 members. They were, newer members to our board. So what a great time for us to all look through policy together. And I think oftentimes there's this, misconception too of like, what does the superintendent do every day? Well, the superintendent enacts board policy every day. That is the role and responsibility of the superintendent. And so I do believe it helped to give me clarity in my role as well.
And if we hadn't been asking the questions, I want our community to know that we never do things on autopilot. That's you don't want your Board of Education and your district to be operating just on what we've always done because it's what we've always done. That shouldn't be what anybody wants. And it's certainly not what we wanted either. So it definitely was time. There's also the exciting part of it was to, there's a online platform from the Illinois Association of School Boards, from the IASB. So we also wanted to invest the time and the resources to do the review, which would also enable us to get all of our board policies on this online platform so that they were searchable and updatable and much prettier than they were before they were very cumbersome. Yeah.
And so they weren't accessible. Like when you talk about clear communication, like we want our community to know what that means. And so I didn't find that they were as accessible as they could have been to support in that clear communication.
I know that you, Dr. Woodland, and I know I would go out and seek information in our board policies to determine what we should be recommending as an action or voting on. And you and I couldn't find things because it was just, dozens and dozens of pages of PDFs and things like that. And so it was really important that not just for us, but for our community, that they could, if there was something that came up and they wanted to find out more about, oh my gosh, I just drew a blank on all policies. But we talk about curriculum. We talk about safety in the schools. We talk about hours of curricular hours. We talk about parent involvement and parent groups in the district and communication and the role of the superintendent and the different leadership roles in the Board of Education and how a meeting runs. All of that is board policy. So it was really great to review that. And I was so proud of my board because we were going to do it in bits and pieces with like a kind of a core team every time. And instead, every board member was at every board meeting for this process.
Exactly.
And it was commendable and it was appreciated. And it also meant that every single board member had a voice.
Yes.
And we have all recently read all of our board policies. So we are well educated. I don't know if I can ask that of people when they're elected to the board, if that's part of the orientation process.
Exactly.
It's a lot, but it certainly could be. Some of it's kind of dry, but it's important. So
yes. And we learn over time, right? We learn by experience.
Definitely. And you and I have both, I know at least I have, in board meetings now, I also try to reference why we're acting the way we're acting, why we're making decisions the way we're deciding, pursuant to board policy, 2220, whatever that would be, this is why we are acting. This is why we are choosing to vote this way on this particular topic. So I just think, I don't think our community might know how important our board policies are to the actions of the board and therefore the district. So I'm glad to have walked through that process recently, and we're definitely a better board for it. And I think we're a stronger district too.
Yeah, absolutely.
For having done that. And it's all searchable. So, hey.
It's all searchable. And it looks much prettier too, which I appreciate.
It is much prettier. It was cumbersome.
Yes. So, Colleen, I'm really just wondering, what does board superintendent communication, what does communication look like and sound like in your world?
Well, I love that you used board and superintendent communication. So truly, Dr. Woodland and I do communicate often via text or via Zoom. We just did this last week to prepare. We have a board meeting in person tomorrow night, a special board meeting. So when we say board president or even board of education, more importantly, and superintendent communications, it's not necessarily between us because we are already always communicating. It's important that all the information that I receive, my board of education also receives. So I'm kind of not necessarily the funnel, but like the conduit. Again, because Dr. Woodland has a lot of work to do. And so she shouldn't have to necessarily manage 7 different, channels of communication to each of the board members. So what I'm thinking of more when you say that is what is the message that you as the superintendent and we as the Board of Education are communicating out to others. Yes, absolutely. So we're very clear on that. Clear is kind. Good communications, very important. Everybody should have the same information. We have gotten much clearer and more consistent with our communications. Not that we were inconsistent before, but I really appreciate all the work that we have done with every channel of information. Every email has been consistent and updated, and like every school email, every district email, all of that is consistent and shares the same information in the same way. And I think our families and our communities can come to expect that and also rely on that and also use that.
Right. As a tool.
Every
day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that it's really important. So we have a lot of information that we can share and that we do share. Some may say too much.
Yep.
I don't agree with that. I think we just need to keep pushing information out and out and out. I really appreciated when your parent advisory committee member came to the meeting, and that was one of the things that was really important to your the district's parent advisory committee was communications and how to be consistent and have it flowing, but not too much at the same time, which I respect that. But I also know that there's some things that we as a board of education in a district need to be careful about when we're communicating. So we can push a lot of information about student activities, but we could never share information about a student, right? Unless it's positive or things like that. And I think that that's one thing I would want our community to know is how careful we are when crafting our communications to be as transparent as possible, but also protect those who might need protected.
I love
like our students, right?
That's great point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a very important part of things. Our Board of Education meetings, right? So if anyone has been able to view them on YouTube or come in person, and we welcome that every third Wednesday, 6 p.m. Come on over. And that's awesome. But there are some things that we are not allowed to talk about in public, in what we call open session. And there's a very short list of items that we cannot talk about in public. And there's OMA, the Open Meetings Act. And so there's a very short list. And so when we have conversations, discussions, topics, whatever that looks like, we look at that list and decide if it's an open session topic or a closed session topic.
Right.
And I think that's important for our community to know that there are some things that legally we cannot share because of confidentiality. And that's why we go into closed session. So I just kind of funnel down into a very specific topic. And you asked globally about communications, but I do think that that confidentiality and that how everything we can have is public is public.
Yep. Absolutely.
There's a few things that can't be. So, yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about too, you mentioned confidentiality, and I think that's so critical in like the working everyday function of a school district and then also of a school board. So tell me a little bit about why that's important.
Of course.
Reality piece.
So in the orientation that the Board of Education president gives to newly elected, right? When we have newly elected board members, the first thing is that confidentiality is one of the most important things. Knowing what is public content and knowing what we just cannot share. So we hire one employee, right? So we hire Dr. Woodland. She is the Board of Education hires one employee. However, we as a district employ 400 people. I mean, hundreds of people. And we really need to remember that our buildings, the work in our buildings is public, and that's great. But the students, our 1,800 students, they're, ages 3 to 14. Right. So there's some things that we can share, and there's some things that we just cannot and must not, that should stay, confidential to a student, right? So those are the kinds of things that are allowed as closed session topics for the Open Meetings Act when we go into closed session at the board meetings. So I have the unfortunate, well, it's not that unfortunate, but as the Board of Education president or the vice president, if he is, in this case, a he, when they are stepping in, if I am unavailable, we have to read the reason on the agenda as to why. The very cumbersome, typically, reason why we're going into closed session to review compensation, to discuss legal issues, to talk about employee issues that might have come up, to talk about student discipline and safety. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we obviously cannot speak of publicly, and that we need to, we absolutely need to take into that closed session. And we take that very seriously.
And one of the other roles of a board president too is to make sure, like in closed session, that we stick to those topics, right?
I have a script. Dr. Woodland knows I have a script
for everything, and I just love it.
So I do have a script for everything, and that's probably a product of me. But I recommend it highly to other Board of Education presidents out there, because I don't want to be inconsistent in my communications, right? I want to be consistent. I want to, be as clear as possible and remind all of us all the time of what is good board work. And so I do have scripts, because I just don't do off the cuff well. And my script that Dr. Woodland has been privy to, and my board members. So it reminds us as we start the clock on closed session rules per OMA, right? The OMA. What happens in closed session stays in closed session. We have an agenda in closed session. I'm reading my script, just like open session. We must stick with the agenda items and not stray. And that's in both open session and closed session.
Yep.
So the agendas for open session, we have to post those to our community 48 hours in advance.
Yep.
Because our community needs to know what we're going to be discussing at our board meetings. And I love the agenda because I think it gives an insight to the things that are important in the work that we're doing. And so, that's all in there. And we have an agenda for closed session as well. And I mentioned a few of the reasons why we can go into closed session, right? There are things that have to be in closed session, and we can't get off track because occasionally it might be a question that should be better off in open session, right? So we have to maintain that, the clear vision of what we're supposed to accomplish in that time that we have together, and not get off track, because we do take the work very seriously. And our students who we're discussing, are, again, student safety or discipline. Our employees, they deserve our focus and our attention and things like that. And so when we're talking about those things, we need to make sure that we're not straying. And that's part of agreeing to OMA, right? So is that we're going to stick with that agenda. We're not going to go off track. all of our, in a legal situation, all of our recordings from closed session could be FOIA-able, so Freedom of Information Act. So it's very important that we stay on track and stay professional, and we do, and I really appreciate my board for all of that. Yes, that's all part of the script.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. And it does. It's just a great reminder every time what we're here for, and it helps us keep on target. And so I think that's, the important thing about it is just being on track and making sure, again, you've already said it, but clear is kind, and making sure that we have that clear communication.
Yes. And, our meetings are at 6:00 at night on a weekday. So by 8 or 9 o'clock, we'd like to stay on track and do what we need to do so we can eventually go home. So there is that as well.
Yes.
That's okay.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's really important that we stick with that and we take that seriously. I like I said, I'm very proud of my board for reminding ourselves regularly what is and is not board work.
Yeah.
And
then, so, Colleen, I'm so proud of you too, because you've been a board president for, I think we're in year 4 together.
Yes.
Isn't that great? And then you've also been a board member now for 8 years.
Yes.
And so I really just love to always wrap up with hearing, what are you most proud of? And then maybe if you'd be willing to share, what are some of maybe your toughest moments that you've had as a board member?
So I am very proud of a lot of things, and it was hard to pin these things down. So I have, 8 years. When I joined the board, my now 20, 24, and 27-year-old sons. So do the math on that one, right? So my youngest was in 8th grade when I was running for election. And so I have a lot of things that I'm proud of personally, but I also know just how much we've done in those 8 years as a district.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. So my youngest was he was a member of the first 6th grade class
oh my gosh.
Yeah, when we switched from the junior high to the middle school.
Yeah.
So he was one of the first 6th graders there. And the middle school has always, and my older two would call it the junior high. They don't.
Yeah, for sure.
They give me a hard time about that. But there's such good work. It's amazing. There's so many good things that are going on at the middle school on any given day. It always has this very special place in my heart. I love that age group. They are, oh my gosh, they are so smart. They are so much more savvy than I was at that age. I just look at them and marvel. Oh my gosh, very global, very they're just amazing. And I think that we are getting the message out more about the awesome things about the middle school. Everybody loves their neighborhood community schools. The little ones are there and parents are involved. So I've really been very proud of the work that we've done to share the message of the good stuff that we're doing at the middle school. So that's been really, really important. So I learned how to be a board president from a really great board president. So I really appreciate all that came before me. But I do like to think that as a Board of Education and as a Board of Education president, that we've, again, kind of refined, like the board policy review and some things like that. So 4 years ago, right, we've made it through COVID.
Oh my gosh.
We made it through, and we made it through well. Our climate and culture in our schools is good. And I know this because I have teachers who stop me and tell me that.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a wish. I can really see that we're doing the good work and letting our staff know how much we appreciate them and how well appreciate them and the work that they do.
Exactly.
We had award-winning schools. All of our metrics increased this year. It's really hard to pin down one thing.
I know, right? And that's a good place to be in,
isn't it? Our finances are stronger than they were.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, we've done a lot of really, really good work in certainly in the last 8 years, and you and me together in the last 4, definitely. So it's hard to, like I said, it's hard to point to just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It seems disloyal to all the other things if I were to point.
Of course.
But yeah, I just, like I said, I'm so honored to do the work because it's amazing. Our students are amazing. Our staff is just remarkable. Our admins are just the best. And I really do believe that. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And Colleen is just the epitome and definition of servant leader. She really does genuinely wake up every day just to make a difference. And I always have to put this plug in. Like, Colleen dedicates all this time as a board president for free. He is not getting a paycheck.
I don't get paid? Wait, hold it. No, I'm
paid for this work. And I mean, that's always this really odd misconception. You know, she's doing it on her own time. And you know, I always love the story. It's like, she's told me, like, this is when I decided that I was going to run for the board. So I think to close on that, like, why did you decide that you wanted to run for the board?
I do love the good work. So I'll tell you the story of my children. Is that the story that you're looking for? So I mentioned earlier my sons. All 3 of my sons are products of District 124. So they came up and graduated from the junior high and also the middle school. So we were a Southwest family, and then the middle school. So in 2016, in November, our then superintendent approached me. I had been doing other things in the district already. I was part of our booster club. I helped establish, with the help of amazing other people, the Education Foundation. So I had been on the communications committee. So I was involved in other things. But we were at the middle school at the Veterans Day event, and our then superintendent said, "Would you be willing to run for school board?" And I was with friends, and that just really resonated with me. And I'm looking around because I was like, okay. So I really was processing that day. And then I picked up my middle son from high school, and we were on our way to do something. And I mentioned he had actually gotten to know our superintendent and had been to lunch with him and things like that. So I was like, okay. They asked me to run for school board, and he said, okay. So he asked me 3 questions, which were really, really great questions. And so the first one was, what will change? Meaning logistically, like in our home, right? So I was doing other service in our community. I was in charge of a local Cub Scout pack and some things like that. And I would need to step away from some things to do other things. And was I willing to? So that was his first question, was what would change logistically? Yeah. The second question, though, is the more important one, is what is the good that you can do? And that was the selling point. I love it. I know, and I'm trying not to tear up. So it was just it's such a good question to ask ourselves anytime. Yep. What is the good that we can do? I did not come in, I did not need to change things. I wanted to be a part of the good work. And what is the good that you can do in your community? And that, like I said, that was the selling point. Oh my goodness. In addition to, a small group of kids in Cub Scouts, I could impact positively 1,800 students in 5 buildings. I could positively improve culture with our teachers and our community. I could do all those things as a Board of Education member. Yeah. So that was the most compelling question. And the third question, of course, which was funny and still is what did Dad say when you told him?
Always the topper on the cake. I love it.
So I do have to say that I have a very supportive family. My boys have watched me all of this evolved. They
Yeah.
worked with me, which is great. They are their own leaders, their own people now. I have a supportive network of, my awesome husband and my fellow board members and community members and things like that. So I also want to put a plug in for no one does this work alone.
Yeah, that's so true.
We can't. It's
Yeah.
more than just a person. It's more than just any one person. It's definitely the community and, the board as a whole and in our whole district. So, so those are the 3 questions: is what would change, what good could you do, and what Dad say?
Yeah.
And they were good questions.
Yeah, for sure.
I still use similar questions when I'm trying to make big decisions. So
that is perfect.
He was very wise at 16.
He was
wise today. Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Colleen. I really, really appreciate you joining us today. It is just so great to hear, I put in air quotes like the secret work of the board when it's really not that secretive.
It's not very exciting or
not very exciting. It's just about making positive impact, as you said, on kids and teachers every day in our community. Yeah, and so thank you so much for everything you do. And we will see you next time.
Truly a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.